What, you don't know where to start? You've arrived at the proper location. We'll provide you lots of information, sources, and gory details to support or construct just about any argument you might have concerning the worst ways to pass away in this video. You'll find plenty of ways to spice up or terminate any casual discussion, from animals biting at you as you observe them consciously to how your mind must accept death as you spend far too much time rushing toward Earth in a falling plane. But before we start haunting you, like and subscribe to Epic Edition Top 10 for more videos and future updates. Number 10. Die of starvation. Eating is, for many of us, the highlight of our day. It stands to reason that going a day without eating would be a terrible way to live. However, starving your body to the brink of death is far worse. First off, a body may go up to 3 months without eating, but it is still necessary to drink liquids like water or even coffee. But what a horrible few months these have been. The body starts to use stored fat for energy after less than a week, which causes it to manifest severe signs. First, to react in a panic, the liver releases poisons that, when produced in big numbers, can be dangerous. You lose roughly 18% of your initial weight before a month is up. And of course, if your body runs out of energy, it starts eating its own muscle and organs. It's possible to delay the effects of famine by consuming salt, but it's impossible to ignore how painful your last days would be. Number 9. Stranded at sea. Being adrift at sea sounds miserable, but at least you can hope a cruise ship will spot you or a mermaid will teach you how to breathe underwater. Everyone has dreams. We're not talking about cool ways to get rescued. Reading about those lost at sea, some of whom don't even have a boat, makes you realize how crushing it must be to be surrounded by death. Will a shark bite you, or your boat, leaving you thrashing in the water? Hunger? Will storm-capsized boats cause hypothermia? Number 8. Fall into volcano. Now, be patient with us. You ask, falling into a volcano. You were essentially dead before you could blink, right? Sure, it sounds horrible. Surprise, my morbid pals. You'll be relieved to learn that if you fell into a volcano golem style, you probably wouldn't be swallowed like a rock plopping into the sea due to the relative density of lava. Instead, you'll drop to the ground on top of the lava with a quiet hiss, okay, I made that up, and then essentially catch fire. Which is rather depressing and terrible. Number 7. Sacrificed. Therefore, picture yourself having to pretend or believe that you are being ritually slain because you are an exceptionally attractive and physically flawless specimen in addition to the fact that you are going to die. Stupid, man. Human sacrifice, another terrible way to die, follows. Here, we're referring to the Incan practice of offering human sacrifice. Human sacrifice was a rather chilly practice that typically included a chief's child. The event would take place high above an Andes summit, literally. On the day of the rite, they did serve the victim some alcohol, presumably to give them some protection from the elements and the suffering. Although many of the victims do exhibit skull fractures, which leads archaeologists to conclude that even if they were not killed by the hit, they were at least knocked out before dying of exposure, they are unsure of how agonizing a death the victims experienced. Which is still a paltry consolation given how horrific the procedure was. But the majority of us don't do human sacrifice. Let's all imagine a dreadful death in a fiery plane crash, something that most of us can relate to. Number 6. Aircraft crash. Even if it may seem like a cop-out, there is something to be said about the complete pain of dying in a plane crash. Like many of our worst ways to die, this one's worst aspect may not actually be the death itself. The lengthy intervals before it all comes to an end are accompanied by an absolute certainty. Just so you know what to expect when the plane begins to crash, let's state the terrible truths. First of all, you are probably 6 miles, 9.6 kilometers above the ground. Hypoxia may develop if you're in a true free fall, and the lack of oxygen will likely cause you to lose consciousness for the first mile or so of the fall. However, when you do awaken, you'll find that you're still falling at 120 miles per hour, 193 kilometers per hour, and that you still have 2 to 3 minutes to get from your approximate cruising altitude of 30,000 feet, 9 kilometers, to the extremely harsh and merciless ground. Number 5. Consumed by animals. Animals are wonderful. They are a source of solace, companionship, and humor. They can also devour you after killing you. Consequently, we now come to our next worst way to die. It turns out that there are a ton of animals who are okay with munching on your attractive person, so it's kind of a catch-all category. We'll only go through a handful of them now. Jaguars do not suffocate their prey by going for the neck, in contrast to other cats that will murder and eat you, lions, tigers, and so on. Instead, they pierce their victims' temporal bones with their extended canines. They do indeed bite the brain. Ouch! Hyenas can compete in the cat-eating people competition, not to be outdone. Smaller prey may be shaken and their spines broken, but they rush in with victims that are human in size. They begin to eat once a victim is prone. Even when the victim is the size of a person and fully conscious. Number 4. Suffocated to death. You consider eating animals to be bad? An animal that is being paid to kill you might be even worse. This is the situation with the elephant execution. The punishment was harsh when it was seen in the late 19th century. Keep in mind that the culprit was first bound to the elephant's leg at the waist before being led around the city in agony. The offender was then forced to kneel and place his head on a stone. The accused head was smashed by the elephant's foot. Consider the painful alternative of dying after merely having an appendage crushed, even though being crushed whole is awful. Even after the object is removed, toxins continue to accumulate at the crush site, including high levels of potassium that can result in cardiac arrest and myoglobin that can cause renal failure. Even after you've had the good fortune to escape the object, are you still going to die from being crushed? Absolutely the worst way to go. Number 3. Die from freezing. Not quite as thrilling as getting mauled by an elephant is hypothermia, or dying from freezing to death. It does, however, fit on our list because it mixes a horrible death with a protracted struggle. The body begins to freeze gradually. As the body cools, we begin to shiver even if we start off at a typical 98 or so degrees F, 37 degrees Celsius. Your muscles are starting to learn we need to produce heat right away when they start to do that. Our muscles become rigid and wooden without heat, which affects our ability to move with balance and control. Be aware that you're probably getting colder if you're rolling around and touching the ground. You are unable to think clearly or hold a concept since your brain is also suffering. The trembling then stops. Which is awful, awful, awful. Because your body is no longer even slightly heated, your body temperature drops. The organs in your body are responding so slowly that you might even think you're already dead. Fortunately, you do eventually lose consciousness, so you have something going for you. Still, a tedious and protracted course of action. Number 2. Torture. Without appreciating the psychotic brains that came before us and devised novel, obscene methods to be executed, no list of the worst ways to die can be considered comprehensive. Let's not forget that current civilization still uses torture and death as forms of punishment for criminal actions. Many historical kingdoms and governments had extremely strict laws regarding criminal offenses. But let's examine some extremely potent methods of death from the past. Number 1. Die of embarrassment. We've certainly accumulated our fair share of terrible routes to take. However, there is one more route that ought to be on the worst list because it is avoidable. And that is humiliation death. First things first, yes, true shame may cause death. An increase in tension or worry, which come along with shame, causes an adrenaline rush that could be fatal. This explains why people can experience a cardiac reaction as a result of panic, a sexual response, or even merely humiliation. But we're talking about a different kind of embarrassment here. Far too frequently, individuals are too afraid or embarrassed to seek medical attention for ailments they perceive as embarrassing or stupid. While being tortured or devoured by a python is not the way to go. Keep in mind that the worst form of death is one that could have been avoided. Which way of death are you most afraid of? Do let us know down in the comments section below. If you find this video entertaining and want to enjoy more videos like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go.